G'day folks, here's another update about the manual point control that I'm doing on Great Chesterford Junction. This is the first frame, as you know, a frame of 10 levers, and now they're all connected up. And as you can see, it gets quite complex as you travel down past the rodding and some of the bell cranks. What I've found is that each point needs a different setup. Because of its location on the board and bits and pieces of framing that you have to pass through or over or under, whatever, each one is really unique. So you can see as it goes down to the bottom there's some interesting overlapping of rods and bell cranks, etc. Whereas number 10 here just has a piece of Meccano as a bell crank which changes the direction of throw. That's all that was required for this one, but you'll notice on the hinge that's supporting the rod that eventually carries through to the point itself, I've done a configuration there where there's a right angle bend at the end, and then the actuator is put on the end there. Number 7 is another interesting one where the hole that passed through the baseboard for the point is very close to some of the framing. So instead of cutting the framing away, I've just set up the hinge with two right angle bends in the rod, and then it comes down to a bell crank and then across to another bell crank, and you can see the direction changing lever there as well. Some of it got quite complex. This will give you an idea of what's involved in the movement. This is number 7 still, so we pull the lever back. Backwards and forwards, and at the same time activating the micro switch. Number 9 though was by far the most complex setup. That's the second rod in from the right. So if you follow it down, it's fairly straightforward as it passes through the cable clips as guides. I've split it here and joined a second piece of rod. It's easier to get it through the baseboard framing if you do a connection at that point. After passing under the baseboard framing, after the connection, it's now the long rod on the right. It comes down to a bell crank where it meets not at 90 degrees but possibly 80 degrees. It travels over and above the rod next to it, along through the baseboard framing again, through the framing, onto a directional change, then to another bell crank, then it turns 90 degrees, goes up through its respective hinge to where the rod does two 90-degree turns back to the hole for the point. You can notice also there that that particular point has two micro switches. The one on the top left is for the LEDs on the control panel, and the bottom one, as you can see, is labelled frog. That's the one to change the polarity on the frog. And now an overall view. This system at the moment takes up approximately half of the main baseboard. So you can see as we start from the lever frame, it's quite complicated as it passes down to the far end of the board where it ends, and you can see some of the work that was done along the bottom edge as well. All numbered so that I can find them later on when I'm looking for them. It all looks different when you look from underneath. Everything's backwards and upside down, so it can get a bit confusing, so therefore the labelling helps quite a bit. Okay folks, now I've got to get on to some wiring of the micro switches before I move forward. I've got another couple of frames to make and then we move on. Cheers, Gormo.